add there?
So I think at one point, internally, from what I can understand from talking to different developers, is that there was some sort of mid-generation Switch update planned at one point, and that seems to no longer be happening, and thus it's pretty clear that whatever they do next is going to be the actual next generation hardware. I don't think it's going to be 2023. And I think Nintendo itself is probably likely very nervous about this transition because, let's face it, their last few transitions have not gone well. GameCube was a flop, and then they had the Wii, which is a huge success. But then they tried to do the Wii U, and it was a miserable failure. And now they have a success again. How do you make that transition while keeping that audience happy and make it exciting again? Like, there's a risk that if they just do more Switch, like enhanced Switch, it won't necessarily get that same buzz. But if they go too far from the concept, they could alienate their fans again. I think they need to ensure that Switch games work on whatever comes next. It has to have backwards compatibility. That's not even a given at this point, but I would hope so. There's just so many decisions to make, including just something as simple as the name. Like, what the heck do you call it? We've been waiting for them to go back to the Super well for a while. Super Switch could work, but then would it just be viewed as an upgrade? They're not going to use Switch Pro, obviously. That's not going to happen. Are they going to call it something else? Are they going to call it the Switch U? No, they're not going to call it the Switch U. I don't think. But there's just a lot of problems to solve there, and I think they're pretty nervous about doing it. And this is the first launch since all the new leadership's been in place within Nintendo, so we just don't know yet what's going to happen.
I mean, I think that if it ends up shipping with something like the Tegra T239 that was postulated at one point, that'll be a massive increase in power for the Switch, and it'll come along with all kinds of new technologies that you'd expect, like DLSS.
Yeah, I think the thing that's happened with the Jetson Nano is that it's actually, there's two versions of that chip, and one has basically got 1024 CUDA cores rather than the 2048 of the other, which is obviously a big cut down. But at the same time, it would this is what I'm kind of alluding to earlier, it would make sense for a Nintendo handheld.
I think it would make sense, but also remember that the Switch as it stands is like it has a 256 core Maxwell GPU, 25.6 gigs of RAM.
From 2015.
Yeah, 8 cores on the chip with 4 disabled. At 1 gigahertz as well. It's a chip that it was state of the art in 2015, but in 2023 it's not looking so hot. I don't think there will be a new Switch in 23. I think it's probably later, maybe 24. But I would expect that no matter what Nintendo ships, it will be a big upgrade just because of the amount of time and generations that have passed and the improvements in architectures and technologies. But it remains to be seen exactly how they handle that transition. And I'm nervous, especially after PSVR 2, about the possibility it might not natively play all Switch software.
I mean, PSVR 2, the situation makes a lot of sense because the entire tracking system is different. The way the controllers work is completely different. I mean, the button, when you're in VR and you see like a diagram of the Move controller and you're using like the PSVR 2 ones, like the whole thing just falls apart. There's a lot of reasons why I think it wouldn't work well there. But with this, I think there's a much better chance. The big thing I think they need to get right is that it needs to be the equivalent of the Switch in 2017 in relation to other consoles in the market. That is, it needs to be possible to run PS5 and Series S, I would say, quality games on this portable machine with the obvious cutbacks, but developers need to be able to easily bring those projects over to whatever Nintendo does next. If they can't do that, they're going to be in serious trouble, I think, in terms of like developer support, because nobody wants to go back to making bespoke versions of games that are different, significantly different, or extending essentially the cross-gen cycle further, if you will, if it's like no more than like whatever we had last time. So I think that's a huge part of what they're doing. It has to run modern games.
Yeah, interesting question, right, John? Because they can't go back from the Switch model. They've switched internal development to one specific platform. Yeah. to one specific platform. It used to be the case that they had developers assigned to mobile and they had developers assigned to console, but now they're all in on Switch, so they can't go back to any other model. They're all in on the Switch concept, I think. And being mobile has given them a massive advantage in that it's a unique aspect to gaming that nobody else is really doing, apart from Valve and Steam Deck. But yeah, really interesting to see where they go next. What is the next innovation to do with a Switch?